programming engineers. Welcome back once more to this drive course. So today we're going to be looking into a very important topic when we configure our drive for any brand actually. So we're going to look into our connection types within our digital inputs so that we can do a start and stop connection. So the most common motion and by force or forcibly that we need to have in our motor is to activate. Okay? It is a start command, a run command. And once it's starting up, once our motor is starting up, if I wish to stop it, then I need the stop command. However, many engineers who start configuring the drive for the first time have a lot of problems when they start configuring it. Because we think that a digital input is going to be willing to start up. And the other input, the other digital input should be the stop. However, by default, we have a different configuration, which is the same one that we have in our simulator on this side. Okay, so we're going to visualize. That is with S1, it starts up. But the problem is that the default configuration is that I should keep my button pressed, and until I let it go, it's going to stop. So what we want is that it starts, that I stop pressing it, and it continues running. And until I press another digital input, it should be stopped. So this type of configuration is called two wires or two cables, or in English it's known as two wires, as I said. So this is coming in most cases by default with this configuration, which is for our digital input, because this is for the digital terminal, S1, S2, and SC. What does this mean? We don't know how this is wired, but we're going to guide ourselves with this by using this. Now remember that further down we're going to be using this methodology, which I'm going to configure drive by drive with our physical input so you can see how it's connected and how they work. And you'll see that it's exactly the same thing. We're going to go step by step. So please don't lose yourselves. Don't get lost with this training. So the first step is to get the data plate numbers. Second step is powering on our drive. And we need to enter those data plate numbers in our drive. Next step is to configure our start command. And that drive command, that speed velocity command, for that reference is where am I going to get that velocity. And then afterwards, we're going to get our start or run command. Where am I going to get the run? For digital input, or for our keyboard, or for our communication. So right now we're on our following step, which is we need to choose what type of connection within or in my digital input am I going to get. Just as long as the command is selected by digital input, because if I only want it through my local part or locally, then it's basically going to be configuring our drive. Okay? This is the most basic configuration that drives can work in. So these are the terminals, and it's this precisely. One wire we're going to get from here, and we are going to connect it. Now, this is important, guys. We're going to connect it to a start or run button. And what is our run button? It has a regularly open contact. That is pretty important. If you have this regularly closed, it's not going to work. So on one side, I'm going to connect it for my contact. And on the other side, needs to be, again, open. So I'm going to connect this towards my common one. So all we need here are cables and buttons. So S1 is going to be one side of the contact or my button to be connected. And on the other side, it is going to go directly to my SC. Now, what's next? It's telling us in our diagram that S2, we need to get a different cable, and we're going to connect it to a different button. And now, on the other side, we're going to connect it to our common. And that is all that we need. Now, here is our button simulation, and this is startup. However, as is stated here in our diagram, it moves forward. Okay, so our digital input number 1 and our digital input number 2 is going to move in reverse. Now, how is this going to stop? It's going to stop when it's not detecting our voltage. Now, what this does is basically open and close our circuit. So this common is the one that is going to send out our voltage to these inputs, which means that whenever it gets voltage in our S1 input, which means that whenever this is pressed because it's regularly open, so when we're pressing this, that voltage is going to help it out, and the controller or the drive is going to indicate, it's going to say, oh, so you tell me that whenever I get a signal for this input, it's going to mean that you want me to send a signal to start the button. So we're gonna move forward. And when it gets the signal, this other input, whenever this does not have a signal, then now the drive is going to say, well, now that I have a signal, you need to call out a run on the motor, but in reverse, according to my 2-wire configuration. And because you configured our input, each one. Okay? Now, what's the right way to do this? As is regularly done, as we regularly start the motor, with our 3-wire connection, 3 cables, or our 3-wire connection. Okay, so how does this work? First, we need to indicate our variator. What type of connection is it that we need? Now, how does this work? Okay, so first off, we have to select our 3-wire. Through our logic, well, actually through a configuration, we need to indicate our drive. And then we need to connect physically these signals, which means that for input number 1, I'm going to get a cable, and I'm going to direct it to my first contact terminal, which is regularly open, and I'm going to connect it here. And on the other side, I'm going to connect that cable to a different cable. But now this time it's going to be regularly or normally closed, regularly closed. So I'm going to connect it in that terminal. And then for that same terminal, I'm going to connect it to my S2 or my S2 terminal, which is a stop command. And on the other side, which is the one that is missing for our NC, which is my stop button. Now this is important because it needs to be regularly closed always. And remember, all emergency stops and everything need to be regularly closed. Now on the other side, now I can connect it directly to my SC common. This is the only thing that I need, or that it needs. And then we have this other option where I can connect it directly to my digital input number 5 to an additional stop button, which I connect to my S5 terminal. And on the other side, I'm going to direct it to my SC, which is my common drive. That's all that we need, guys. Did you guys get confused? Don't worry about this. Remember that our cabling, I'm going to show this step by step in our following videos. When we are connected, or when we are connecting from scratch our digital terminal and physically for my drives. So I hope you guys are starting to get a little bit more of a notion with our electric diagrams, because this is pretty simple. But even so, if it gets complicated and you're getting started in this programming world, don't worry, guys, because we're going to be following our diagram so you can understand this. Okay? Now, in the meantime, we're going to configure what type of connection is the one that we're going to need for our digital input. So we're going to select this. Now, what do we need? We need our very famous manual. Now here I already have the part where I need both cables or our three-wire configuration. How are you going to look for this? You're going to look for this by 2 cables, that's one option, or 2 wires. There are certain manuals who confuse this cable and wires. Well, they don't really confuse it. That's their translation. Okay, so here we get, I get 2 wires, and it's the same thing. But this is, again, this is in Spanish. Okay, if it's in English, look for it as wires. Now it's telling us here, two wires, 2 wires. Let's see here. Again, 2 cables. And this is where we're at. So you guys, all you need to do is analyze the sections. So it's telling us here, our manufacturing configuration is set by default, as I had previously said. This is generally how it is. It should be done right from manufacturing, straight from manufacturing, because this is generally the most common option. The sequence that is already predefined is like it was a jog. So it's very similar to a jog, because our jogging option or our jog option works as long as I press this button, which in this case, our automation part, all I wish to do is to by pressing the button, by pushing the button, is going to work. So this sequence is one that's telling us that when H105 for S5 selection for digital terminal multifunction 0, our multifunctions for S1 and S2 terminals work with a 3-cable sequence. And the function entry turns into reverse. Now, unfortunately, in our simulator function, we are unable to wire our 3-wire option. Why? Because they're already wired automatically. Okay, so our drive already has our cabled option, our 2-wire option. So for it to be 3-wire, we need to have a regularly closed contact, which we don't have here. So therefore, we're unable to visualize through our software. But further down, when we are configuring our drive, our Yaskawa drive, you're going to be able to notice how this option works. So therefore, this is our topic for today, and I'll see you guys on our next video.